It's easy. Phone is easy.
Yeah. Then I'll take some pictures on and off while we're talking here.
Okay.
Let's see. But yeah, it's just thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's see. I mean, I don't have any gotcha questions or anything like that here. This is just kind of make sure that I remember everything here. But you know,
Yeah.
I see you kind of coming, as I mentioned, I see you kind of coming from the populist, grassroots, conservative wing of the party that feels that it's been ignored by the party establishment for so many years. I mean, do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I haven't been a part of the Republican Party long enough to have a personal opinion on it. Obviously, it would be misplaced in many ways for me to speak about the totality of the party's history. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on in politics, obviously, and there's probably bad blood from a number of situations on any side that you could, characterize or measure. Obviously, the rise of Donald Trump and the MAGA movement in general is greatly a response to traditional Republican Party politics. By their own admission, I mean, it isn't really a conjecture or an opinion. They, being the traditional Republican Party insiders, greatly rejected Donald Trump because he was very different than many of the Republicans that came before him. So I think the entire country is under that wave or that momentum, and I would certainly fall in the Donald Trump camp. So that I guess would make me a response from the grassroots.
Yeah, because looking at who the delegates who were supporting you at the convention, they seem to be very much from the grassroots wing of the party.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's hard for me to tell if there is anything but a grassroots wing. When you win 68% of the delegate vote, it would appear that the grassroots has overcome whatever other wing of the party exists, and it also doesn't escape me that potentially there are some people that voted for me in the endorsement process that aren't necessarily in the Donald Trump camp, and that's a good thing. I'm glad I can make headway with whoever those non-MAGA Republicans would be, on behalf of the MAGA movement, obviously. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you talked a bit about the MAGA movement. You were somebody who led Black Lives Matter protests here after the murder of George Floyd.
Wrong.
Okay.
Wrong.
Set the record straight.
Yes, there. I did not lead Black Lives Matter protests. Yeah. I led independently organized protests, independent of Black Lives Matter, the organization. Now, if you want to extend the identity of Black Lives Matter to anybody who wears a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, I'd say that that's pretty fast and loose with the definition. Okay. But the organization itself here locally, I've never been involved with. In fact, they and I had real conflict on the premise, their starting point was something like anybody who wants to organize any demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations or anything else should, by default, come through them and help organize or collaborate with them. I patently disagree with that on a fundamental basis, but even more so because I don't agree with their politics and I don't agree with the emphasis that Black Lives Matter has placed on certain political issues versus others. And my protests were more about what I would describe as economic sovereignty for American citizens, and to point out that the way the money works in this country is really the root issue, that the police are just a scapegoat, and the police are in many ways a scapegoat. Does policing have problems? Sure, a lot of parts of our society have problems, but the way the money works is really the root issue, and that's why I led people to the Federal Reserve. So they weren't Black Lives Matter protests.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to clarify that. Again, some of the reporting back then, it was a chaotic time.
Yes, no doubt, chaotic. Yeah, hard to get everybody's story straight in the fray.
Yeah. All right, so
But I will say though, they never asked me, right? I mean, they kind of just assumed that any black person that stood up was a Black Lives Matter protester, and I do think what happened that day was wrong, and I do think that was not treated as an American citizen should be treated. And I'll never go back on that because, I mean, the video speaks for itself. And I have a tough time often, arguing with Republicans, many Republicans, about the what took place that day and how people should view it. And I'm willing to have that fight. I'm willing to have the fight about first principles and ideas with almost anybody. That doesn't bother me. That's why I think I'm fit for this role. But at the same time, I will say that it doesn't escape me that Black Lives Matter as an organization places very little emphasis on the way that the money works in this country. And it's strange because the Occupy Wall Street movement did come from the left wing of American politics. And Black Lives Matter greatly picked up that energy as the next big public demonstration, sort of, community activism. And yet that's never really incorporated into what they protest. And that bothers me. I mean, any organization that is as well funded as Black Lives Matter that does not point out the corruption of the money, both in politics but in our country writ large, I have a big problem with. I'm skeptical of.
Okay, what's your nutshell version of what you talk about as being the money issue here in politics?
Well, there's a huge issue with special interests in lobbying. That's probably the first order of business. But I mean the way that the entire money system works in our country and around the world. I mean that you have this, this sort of underclass and the sort of lumpen proletariat, and then you got this upper class, and then you got this working class in the middle that pays for everything. And we saw back in 2009 that Barack Obama, as America's most progressive president in history, bailed out the people who were guilty during the financial crisis. That situation has never been remedied. Nobody will spend a day in jail or even be brought up on charges for the financial crimes that took place and that continue to take place. And so, when I march people to the Fed, not that all of the financial corruption is on the Fed, but I do think that we should end the Fed as an institution. It's unconstitutional. And then I do think that the Fed has been a gross misuse of government and policy and money against working class citizens. And that's not just me saying that. Remember, PBS in 2019, I believe it was, or maybe early in 2020, did a documentary entitled The Power of the Fed. And PBS is by no means a right-leaning conspiratorial media outlet. Would you agree? I mean, they're pretty middle. They're as middle of the row as you can find, and they're still leaning a tad bit to the left. And even they, in their documentary, had a number of people who they asked about the Fed that said it's very hard to distinguish whether what the Fed is doing is intentional and malicious or whether it's just an incompetent use of monetary policy. So, the Fed is a problem. Yeah, absolutely. And either organizations like Black Lives Matter have no clue what the Fed does, which wouldn't surprise me, or they're intentionally trying to shield the Fed and financial institutions from criticism. And as a black man, that offends me. I won't participate or stand for that. So.
Yeah, okay. Some of the issues that you've talked about here, they kind of bring me to the next point here.
Yeah.
How did your relationship with people like Steve Bannon begin? And along the way, you've also become closer to Alex Jones. How did all that start?
Well, my relationship with Steve is kind of a funny story. When I joined the Big Three, co-founder of the Big Three, Jeff Quatnitz, and I started to talk about politics. We developed a good relationship and friendship. He's a great guy and a very smart individual. And just in our casual conversations about politics, Steve Bannon's name came up, and I told him that I liked Steve, that I had watched Steve talk about a few things, and I hadn't really known of Steve before other than that he was at Breitbart. But when I actually got a chance to watch him talk at length, I was really impressed by the things he was saying. And I'd love to be able to connect with him. Just so happens that Jeff Quatnitz and Steve Bannon used to work together on a business venture, and he was able to connect me with Steve. And after that, after me and Steve got connected, the rest is history. I mean, it was a sort of match made in heaven because, he has always placed an emphasis on the direction of the Republican Party and the way to save our country is to activate the Black and Hispanic working class, or the working class, and even, let's say, the working, as he would say, 25% of the Bernie guys, the economic populists, the economic nationalists. And that if we can do that, then we can build something in this country that can really rebuild this country the right way. So he and I were a match made in heaven, and he's done, an incredible job of supporting me and allowing my passion and young insightfulness for the young crowd in the Republican Party or in the conservative movement to shine through. And I appreciate him. He's a friend. He's a mentor. He's a comrade, and he's an American hero. Alex Jones, I don't necessarily remember how I got connected with Alex exactly, but Alex is a great friend as well, and I really like Alex, and he has a lot of courage to say things that many people won't say, and right, wrong, or indifferent, as an athlete, you kind of acknowledge anytime you go to play the game, you take a risk. Mm-hmm. That's sports too, right? Definitely with journalism. Mm-hmm. I mean, anytime you write a story, you run the risk of being completely wrong. But that's the risk that people take to participate in a society where we're trying to share information and find the truth. Sometimes your search for the truth comes up short and you come up empty, or your takes and whatnot. So Alex has definitely said some things that he has admitted were mistakes. But he said a lot of things that were true as well. And the things that he said that were true seem to be things that many mainstream media institutions refuse to speak about. And I have to have great respect for that because I come from a similar background.
Yeah, okay. And then with Bannon, obviously you were close enough that you wanted to go out to Connecticut to show your support as he reported for his prison term there.
Right.
It's played back your remarks and his there.
Yeah.
It's obviously that you two are quite close.
Well, look, yes, we are close, and I definitely felt it was important to go and support him being wrongfully imprisoned, in my opinion. And it's not really an opinion. When you throw a 70-year-old man in federal prison for contempt of court, for a misdemeanor, it seems like a miscarriage of justice, to say the very least. To say that it was politically motivated and targeted prosecution is another way to say it. And we'll let the House either step up or ship out in terms of remedying that situation. And that's on Speaker Mike Johnson and the rest of them. I'm not in that body, so I can't say what they will or won't do. What I will say is, I don't think that the way that the January 6th commission was constructed was fair, or was it balanced. And I don't think that the way that they interpreted the law around Steve's executive privilege is fair either. And then we can look at other people like Eric Holder or Merrick Garland and many other situations that will show a contradiction of the application of the law. And that's just dangerous for everybody. Now, Steve being one of the, again, by many mainstream media outlets' own opinion, Steve is considered one of the intellectual thought leaders of the America First MAGA conservative movement. I mean, this is their words, not mine. Mm-hmm. So if prosecution takes a man out of off the chessboard, off the playing field, 4 months before an election, one of the most contentious elections in American history, I think all Americans should be concerned with it. I certainly am. The fact that he's my friend was just an added incentive to be there to support him personally.
Yeah. Okay. Turning back here, kind of more locally, did you? How did that come together with? His video supporting your candidacy when you were at the convention?
Steve's?
Yeah.
Well, that's he sent that to me. He sent that to me and said, "Hey, here's a video, supporting your endorsement for the convention," and it was effective. I mean, look, Steve is 100% 50 times more popular than I am in conservative media and with Republican voters. Obviously, he has one of the biggest radio shows in the world with War Room. So his say goes a long way, and I was just proud, as a young person coming up in the movement, that he was able to give me his endorsement for the convention. And I think a lot of people enjoyed seeing him to start off my convention speech back in May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, am I right in presuming that had an awful lot to do with how things turned out? Because I'm guessing that a lot of the delegates in the hall there didn't really know that much about you.
Well, yeah. Who can say? What I'll say is this. Steve has a huge impact wherever he goes. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. I think my speech had a lot to do with it as well. And I think Joe Frazier's speech had a lot to do with it as well, my opponent, or the leading opponent in the endorsement race. So, all of those things came together, what ended up being a victory. And I think really what people understand is the position of a person like Steve politically, what his views are, what the platform is of the America First and MAGA movement. Mm-hmm. And they feel that my description of my role in that as a United States Senate candidate, but just as a person in the movement as well, is in alignment. And it is in alignment. And there's a reason why many of your mainstream media outlets tie me and Steve Bannon so closely together. They're not dumb. You guys know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You do your work, and you see the things that I'm saying, and you know the things that I emphasize and the things I prioritize, like my campaign slogan, "Border Debt Forever Wars." It doesn't get much more America First and MAGA than that. Mm-hmm. And so I think the delegates responded because they feel a genuine candidate who reflects that Donald Trump MAGA movement.
Were you surprised at getting the nomination?
100%.
I played your podcast, the one that you did right after that, and you seemed kind of stunned.
Oh, I was shocked, of course. Yeah, first of all, I've never been to an endorsing convention. I've never been to a state convention, Democrat or Republican. So I didn't really know what to expect. I had heard stories. I understood what the process would be like. I had gone back and watched the 2022 state convention, where the gubernatorial race was the highest on the ticket, and so I kind of had a rough sense of what would take place, but I'd never been there myself, and I'd obviously never been getting endorsed for the highest seat on the ticket. To be overwhelmed, I thought that it would be close, and I even had my skepticisms that whatever party. Traditional party insiders had whatever amount of influence they had very well could sway the convention in the direction of Joe, whether or not he was the best candidate. And so I walked into it with that understanding, and I was ready for that disappointment. And I was pleasantly surprised when I was informed I had won 68% on the first ballot. Supposedly that rarely happens in any of these endorsing conventions. So that was a
very long endorsement fight.
Yeah, that was a sweet victory as well, that it was so overwhelming on the very first ballot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now that you've got it, the endorsement, what kind of material support have you gotten from the state party, or what are you expecting to get from them pre-primary? I know that you were on the podcast with Chairman Han and with Executive Director Matthews.
Yes. Well, the party's been great with us so far, and I appreciate Anna, and I think she has a pretty fresh take, and has a fresh desire to move the party in a direction that's viable for the future, and I think that David Han has done a great job in empowering her to have some autonomy to kind of put her foot in the fire and get her hands in there and do some work. And David's been great, and I've been able to call them up at any time, and they answer the phone and they respond quickly, and they've given my campaign all the materials that we've asked for, whether it be data, whether it be other contact type of information that we would need. And so I have no complaints about the party up until this point, and specifically when it comes to David and Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, have they been able to provide funding yet? Because that's obviously an issue here.
Well, I don't think it's an issue. They have not provided funding. I don't even necessarily know what the legal process is for them directly contributing to the campaign or not, and how that all works. I'm not really sure. So I don't want to misspeak, right? But I'm not so sure this election is about money. I think this election, more than any time in recent American history, is about the people. And that's why the campaign theme is "The People Are Coming." And they definitely showed that during the convention. Will we need some money? Absolutely. Are there creative ways to get around the issue of money? Absolutely. Have the Democrats proven that their ability to raise money and their what do they want to call it? Their enthusiasm from their donor base far exceeds our own as Republicans. We don't even have to argue that. The proof is in the pudding on that. So if the belief in the Republican Party is that we have to raise as much money as the Democrats to be competitive or win, then we might as well bow out before the race even starts, because it's not going to happen. And the Senate majority race, the runoff there between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, showed us everything we need to know about the trajectory of spending and fundraising in American politics. He outraised Warnock. He outraised Herschel Walker 5-1, and it wasn't because Herschel Walker was a bad candidate. That's what people will have you believe, but it's because of how enthusiastic the Democrat donor base is about playing with their money. Playing politics with their money. So we just can't start from a place that we have to raise as much money as them in order to be competitive. This is politics. Money is in politics, and I have a problem with that, and we all should. But politics is about the people, and it should be about the ideas. And those things we can communicate without money.
Okay, because it's, according to this week's FEC filings, Klobuchar has $6.4 million in the bank to your $48,000.
Yeah.
So what do you do then in that situation?
Well, first off, I think you make that the point of the campaign. I think, there's a reason why Klobuchar has $6 million on hand. And the question is, where did she have to go to get it? And what did she have to give up? And what part of America's future and American citizenship did she have to sell out to get that money? And those are very prudent questions for all American citizens to ask, regardless of party. Where do people have to go to get? Well, I'll ask you, if I can. Where do people usually have to go to get that type of cash?
Traditional donors, I'm guessing.
Right. Major donors.
Yeah.
Big donors. And so there is a schism between the major donors of the Republican Party and the base. This was the advent of the Tea Party movement and greatly the advent of Donald Trump's ascendance back in 2016. This is a huge part of Breitbart's legacy is to address the schism between the donor class of the Republican Party and the grassroots. So we have that issue going already, not to mention the general enthusiasm from the Democrat donors that is far exceeds our own. So we're kind of working on two issues here on our side. But again, my pitch to the American people is much more simple. Where do you think, as an American citizen, where do you think you have to go to get that kind of money, whether you're running Republican or Democrat? And if you think everything's on the up and up with that type of transfer of cash in American politics, then you got to do a little bit more research on how the money works. Hence, back to my first statement about how the money works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, in terms of what have you been doing to campaign? I see your social media a lot.
Yeah.
I see you're a prolific tweeter.
Prolific tweeter, I like that.
And you've got your podcast. You're doing the debate tonight.
Yes.
Last I heard, anyway.
Yes.
I know that you called for it to be postponed.
Yes.
But,
Yes.
The organizers, my understanding at least, I haven't heard directly from the organizers, is that that's still on.
Yes, still on. We'll be there at the debate. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Yeah. So is it that kind of thing that you do to campaign?
Well, look, I think it's going to be a huge force multiplier grassroots effort. A combination of all the traditional things in a campaign, some new creative ideas as well, as far as advertising. Social media can be great, but it also can be fickle. What we want to do is we want to activate the Republican activists and voters all across this state. And really, more than anything, I think the opportunity in my campaign is to heal a rift in this country between black people and white people that has existed for a long time. And in each individual community, in each individual state all across this country, politicians who run for office, who live in the charged, racial propaganda times that we live in, not to say there isn't racism, but there's certainly a heavy level of propaganda around it. Every politician has the chance to try and heal that rift. I present a unique possibility or opportunity to do that because I'm a black man, number one, but because I come from the neighborhoods that the Republican Party traditionally hasn't been in. And if I can get Republicans to represent themselves, present themselves to the minorities in this state, and then if I get the minorities to have an open mind and at least hear the Republicans out on their pitch of why they should consider voting Republican, I think we can do something that money can't buy, something genuine.
Yeah. At this point, have you sought Trump's endorsement? Have you heard anything?
Well, we're always seeking the endorsement from Donald Trump. That is always helpful. It'd be great. We definitely want it. If my race and the fate of Minnesota in this election cycle is trending with what we see at the national level, then Donald Trump's going to be helpful to anybody at this point. And we would love that. Have we been in contact with the Trump team? Absolutely. He's a busy man. He was almost killed. So, and before that, he had the most unjust amount of lawfare, deployed on a person that I think I'm aware of in American history. So he's dealing with a lot of things, and when he gets around to it and looking over this campaign and my ability to communicate the issues and the ideas of what the America First movement stands for, we're confident that he'll see favor to endorse, and that'll be great.
Yeah. What do you think of the selection of J.D. Vance?
I don't know. I didn't know a lot about J.D. Vance, and that's how politics works. Everybody thinks we got some cheat sheet here or some guide to who's running and who's doing what. Look, American politics is a huge field. You can't keep track of everybody. Everybody kind of gravitates to their corner of the field, and you're more involved in knowing of that than others. Look, I like what he had to say yesterday at the convention. I really do. And I like his story. I started to read his book. I went back and watched that documentary. I love his grandmother. I think his grandmother's an American hero. I really do. And yeah, it's always better that American politics gets younger. And I think Donald Trump is smart to appeal to a younger echelon of voters, whether they be Republican or not. J.D. Vance speaks to that. Ohio was obviously a key state in the last two elections, always really is. And it's, it's working class, Rust Belt American citizens. And we should respect them. We should honor them. We shouldn't call them deplorable. And J.D. Vance represents a forgotten America, a forgotten, demographic of American citizens who are right to be pissed off at the direction of this country. Mostly selling out our manufacturing base and sending those jobs to Mexico and other places as well. So he articulated that well. He's sharp. He knows the issues. He speaks great. He's young, and fair play. More power to him.
Because it struck me that he's coming from kind of a similar place that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a very similar place. Both came from single mother households. Am I right? I think I heard that's part of his story, being, coming from a single mother household. Myself as well. And, that's kind of that rift that I was talking about between black and white, right? J.D. Vance is white. I'm black. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It is what it is. But we both grew up in single mother households, and we understand what that's like. And we understand what it means for your mother, your working class mother, to be crushed by economic policy. or let's say trade agreements or foreign policy for that matter. So yeah, fair play to him. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. I'd love to see a debate between him and Kamala. I don't think that she stands a chance whatsoever, which is why they probably won't agree to do one. We'll see. We'll see what happens. JD seems like a great pick to me. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I also wanted to give you a chance to respond to some of the things that have been said to you here. The criticism that you're anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ,
yes,
anti-woman.
Yeah.
What's your take on all that?
Well, look, first off, it says everything you need to know about American media and American politics, that when that question is posed from the social media material it is drawn from, that those three things are pulled out from the rest. Because I also said a number of other things in that bio description of myself where I was being facetious. I said a number of other things that nobody's mentioned, like Hotep, for example. And Hotep is a term that has, been reserved for black people, usually black men, who have more conservative values, let's say, and believe in traditional gender roles or traditional American culture or traditional human, civilized culture all around the world. Really, we've gotten to a strange place now. So I called myself a number of other things. I guess the mainstream media only is interested in those three. Mm-hmm. And that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, it really does. Mm-hmm. And that is the modus operandi of identity politics, is to take blacks and women and Jews and the LGBTQ and use them and weaponize them against people who want to prioritize American citizenship. And the point of it, in my opinion, is to have those identities supersede American identity. And that's just patently wrong. It's not only is it wrong, it's going to be ineffective and counterproductive to the prosperity of American citizens, including those groups of people, including blacks, women, the LGBTQ, and Jews. Mm-hmm. It's going to be at their detriment, actually. Mm-hmm. And I've experienced that in the black community, which is why you see the black community making a significant shift in their politics, with 50% of black men saying that they're going to vote for Donald Trump or a Republican in general for the first time in my 33 years of being alive. Mm-hmm. So the black community is kind of the first domino to drop in these identity politics. Now, Jews as well are starting to ask the question, well, wait a second. We thought that we were the protected class, and all of a sudden we're seeing Democrats go pro-Hamas. And so now they're starting to ask the question, and even women who were, staunch feminists and believed in Title IX are now having to contend with men, biological men, coming to compete in their sports, and they're saying, wait a second, we thought this movement was to protect our rights, and so those are the the issues on the horizon. To answer the question more directly about anti-Semitism, when they can't call you racist, they call you anti-Semitic. I mean, that's a common, practice of people who criticize this America First movement or black candidates, black Republicans like myself. As soon as they can't call you, a racist, they go to the next best thing, and that is anti-Semitic. And it is my opinion that the black identity and the Jewish identity have been used in a very similar fashion to be the linchpin of the expansion of the federal government and the ambition for global government. I mean, and to be honest, there is a Jewish elite, there is a black elite, there is a woman elite, there is a Hispanic elite, there is an LGBTQ elite. Not all of your LGBTQ citizens are in that elite tax bracket or have that elite, influence, titan of industry or whatever the case may be. So there are elites of every demographic, and when you can't even say that there are elites of every demographic, you're playing with fire. You really are. You're playing in dangerous waters where we can't just speak the truth. There's nothing wrong with saying there's a Jewish elite. There is. The question is, who are they and what are their intentions and what do they believe in? But it's the same question I would ask of the black elite, the black bourgeoisie, as I call them in this country, the grandstanding sellout black bourgeoisie, in fact. And it's not by accident that they work in close conjunction with what I would call the Jewish lobby. I mean, if you can't say there's a Jewish lobby, it's like, well, what are we talking about? Of course, there's a Jewish lobby. There's a black lobby. There's a WASP lobby. I mean, it's just a fact. It's a matter of fact. It's not an opinion, and it's not a malicious attack on them either. And I would gladly sit down with anybody from the Jewish lobby or from the Jewish community to discuss my frustration with the way that their identity has been used. And I would pitch to them that they stop allowing their identity to be used that way. And I would do it proudly, and I would do it with no equivocations whatsoever.
Okay. And another set of things that you've taken some heat here for. Your campaign expenses, especially from 2022. I see that this past week here
we solved that issue.
Yeah, that you reimbursed your campaign for non-authorized expenses like Gold Rush Cabaret.
Right.
But the Campaign Legal Center, in its complaint with the FEC, they were alleging that you used your campaign to pay over $157,000
Yes.
personal expenses.
Yes.
What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, did you see the filing?
Their filing, yes.
No. Did you see the amended filing? Our filing.
I went through some of that. Yeah, it's
well.
hard to
It would
piece together
it would
some of what-
okay
all of it, yeah.
from the filing.
Yeah.
Because it's just you'd have to have the materials to verify. Well, what it shows is that certain I don't know what you would call what is the campaign legal fund? What would they be called? A nonprofit?
A nonprofit, probably.
Okay.
A watchdog group.
NGO? Are they an NGO or something like that? I don't know what they are. Well,
I
to
would
be decided
probably
what they are.
I would probably call them a
nonprofit.
nonprofit.
Okay, good.
Group.
What we see is that some of the nonprofits in the American political industry aren't as competent as they present themselves, that they aren't as legitimate and objective as they present themselves. And their initial claim that I had used $157,000 for personal use was erroneous. And now everybody can see. And we're happy. I mean, we're elated. Honestly, I got to tell you, when they first filed that complaint and that report came out, I had a big smile on my face. Mm-hmm. The reason why is because I knew exactly what the money was spent on. And I knew that our FEC filing, wasn't done properly, and that we had plenty of receipts to show what that money was spent on, and that this group had jumped the gun for their political, for their political allegiance, let's say. And it's just more of a sign of the lawfare and the miscarriage of justice, miscarriage of the media to try and demonize black Republicans for sure, but Republicans and MAGA candidates in general. $157,000. Out of that $157,000, about $108,000 were checks and wire transfers that were completely legitimate. And I told them that when they called me about it. I told the Daily Beast that when they called me. I said, you guys are going to be eating your words on this one. Mm-hmm. You guys are going to be tripping all over yourselves trying to backtrack this. And then what they're going to do, and you'll see, they'll try and limit the scope now of their accusation against me to whatever smaller number they can make a gripe about. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, we're comfortable with the amendment to the FEC filing, and to be honest, I was comfortable when the story first hit.
So you're saying that there are no improper expenses in there, and that
no. What I'm saying is that the vast majority of what the money was spent on, for example, the Daily Beast and then the Campaign Legal Fund cited wire transfers and checks that they speculated could be a violation. That $110,000 of wires and checks was completely legitimate. They went to vendors and people who do services for like videography, and all of that stuff is right there and with a trail of receipts and paper evidence. So, the rest of the expenses, we had to go back and do an accounting of. Obviously, a lot of money gets spent on campaigns for a number of things, and some of it at the end of that audit was deemed by our team to say, hey, this isn't authorized campaign expenditures. And I had no problem in reimbursing that. I mean, it's going to come out of my personal money, whether or not I was the one to make those specific charges. And that also happens where other people on your campaign have the authority, or let's say the banking access to make purchases on behalf of the campaign. And sometimes that doesn't go as planned. But I'd say that about $10,000 of expenditures that are questionable, and to be honest, I didn't even really I just didn't want to put up the fight. I said, hey, if you guys are saying this $10,000 of expenses don't pass the sniff test, fine, I'll pay it back. But $10,000 is a far cry different than 157, isn't it?
It's a much smaller percentage.
It's a far cry different. 160 grand and $10,000 is a huge difference. Yeah.
Okay. And then you also get hit for child support.
Yeah, you know, and
I mean, are you up to date there?
That is one of the most disgusting that is one of the most disgusting criticisms that I've experienced in this whole process, the child support. And I want to give you this in two chunks if I can. The first thing is anybody who looks at the totality of my family court history and those court documents or court files can go back to the very beginning. Now, 12 years ago, maybe. When I was 21, I had just been drafted into the NBA. Anybody can go back and look at that history and see that I was court ordered to pay child support at an NBA salary or based on an NBA salary. And I paid child support based on an NBA salary for 2 consecutive years. Every time I got a check from the NBA, and it was twice a month, bi-monthly checks from the NBA, which is common for NBA players, all year long for 12 months. Every time I got a check from the NBA, my child support was garnished directly from that check. And it was probably in the amount close to $2,500, if not more than that. And so it was about $5,000 a month for 2 years straight, over $100,000 I paid in child support. And when I no longer was playing in the NBA or receiving an NBA salary, I was still court ordered to pay at an NBA rate, at an NBA salary rate for child support. Obviously, that's going to get difficult for most people. And not only is it going to be difficult, but as a 23-year-old, I had no familiarity with the family court process. And as many Americans don't have familiarity with the legal process or the court process until they come into contact with it, I had no familiarity with it whatsoever. So I didn't understand that it was on me to come back into court and ask the court to modify my support. And that's where the big bulk of these arrears come from. And anybody can go and see that. And even furthermore, there is a cultural rot that is the attack on men and masculinity. And this is a great example of it. And you can tell me what you think about this. When a mother loses her employment, or a mother can no longer provide food and shelter or financial stability for her child, do we ever question her fundamental love for that child in our society? I'm asking a question.
Not that I've encountered.
That's not typical, is it?
Not that I've encountered.
Yeah, me either. I've never encountered where a mother loses her job or she, for some reason, she can no longer really provide the financial stability that we all as a society would deem necessary for her child. And everybody goes, you must not love your kid. But when men lose their work, like I did in the NBA, when we lose our job and we can no longer meet the demands of child support or court orders or whatever the case may be, it's claimed that we don't love our children. I mean, not only is it a double standard, it's just an ugly thing to say on a human level. There are plenty of men all around the country who have financial burdens and issues that they can't meet, increasingly so given the economy. There are men all around the country who have issues with family court and marriage court, and there are men who struggle to meet the demands, the financial demands and requirements. It says nothing about them as people personally. I mean, unless they've lied and conned somebody out of money, but that's not the vast majority of American citizens and men. Most men just have trouble paying their bills. And I thought the Democrat Party of everybody would understand that. It's almost as if the Democrat Party, through my candidacy, is trying to make a claim about the poor. I mean, has the Republican Party become the party of the poor and the Democrat Party become the party of the rich? Certainly our fundraising would say so. But my point still stands. Women are not criticized the same way for not being able to provide financial stability for their children. It's never accused that they don't love their kids. That's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous for men. I love my children. Being in an arrears for the family court based on an NBA salary. And look, I went back many times and I asked the court, this initial calculation, these initial arrears are based on a salary that I never made. And the state told me that the law reads that they have no way to modify arrears, whether or not I have validity to what I said, that they legally can't modify the arrears. Okay, so now we're talking about statutory law in the family court. So it's not like the family court or the family court judge didn't agree that what I was saying was right, or because it's factual. I was in the NBA for 2 seasons, then I wasn't receiving that same salary, yet I was accruing arrears based on that salary in court order. They could have retroactively modified it, but the law doesn't allow them to. This is a failure of the legal system. My arrears are a failure of the legal system. Or let's say a shortcoming. I mean, maybe failure is too harsh or too steep, but it certainly is understandable what happened with my arrears. And to be honest, the mainstream media knows that. And that's what pisses me off. That's what frustrates me, is that the mainstream media knows that, and not a single outlet that's mentioned my back child support mentions my NBA career and me being court ordered to pay support at that salary base. Not a single one. Don't you think that's a tad bit unfair, or let's say, not objective? I don't think that's objective.
Okay. So, but are you caught up at this point then?
Well, no, I'm not caught up on the arrears in general, but I am in compliance with the current support order.
Meaning you're making your current payment.
Right, right. And for the last 3 years, I've actually overpaid my child support. I posted a snippet of my court file document that said I was $7,000. I mean, I don't know what people think about money, but $7,000 is a lot of money in today's economy, right? I mean, maybe not for some people, but for me it is.
Yeah.
I was $7,000 over my child support.
Yeah, I saw that post.
I had overpaid child support by $7,000. Not a single mainstream media outlet mentioned that. Do you think they didn't see it? Do you think they didn't find that? And when they went through the court documents to verify how much money I owed, do you think they didn't see that I had overpaid by $7,000 in recent years?
It can be hard to tell things from court documents sometimes.
True, but why didn't they mention that?
I don't have an answer on that one.
Okay, I'm just asking you. Yeah, maybe it'll influence what you end up writing. Maybe you'll mention it. Maybe you'll be the first one.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. I think that catches me up on all the points that I knew that I needed to cover here.
Okay.
What else would you like to say? What else should I be thinking about here?
Well, obviously Donald Trump, there was an attempt on his life, and that is one of the most significant moments in recent American history, if not American history, definitely all the way back to when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and it is right up there in terms of cultural impact. The rhetoric has become so dangerous on both sides. It's my hope that we can get back to a sane and logical place in the discussion. I understand people have their views, and as views become more entrenched in certain groups of people, that the discussions become difficult. But I think there are some basic things that we can come and agree on. And I think the MAGA movement, for example, with Title IX, do we have to let biological men participate in sports with women? I mean, is that something we have to do? I mean, why can't we just create it? I mean, if we want to say the LGBTQ deserves the right to compete and exist, why can't we just create our own league? Certainly there's enough financial support and enthusiasm to have them, maybe they should have their own Title IX. Maybe they should maybe it should be Title whatever the number would be. But why can't the trans and LGBTQ, citizens just have their own leagues, have their own competitions? And I'm not saying that's the answer. What I'm saying is that it seems ridiculous that we've boiled it down to some knockdown, drag-out fight where the only answer is if we don't let the men participate with the women, then we're bigots. I don't see that as being productive. I don't see that as being a place where we can. It's a non-starter, right? And I say that in conjunction with Donald Trump is because that people have gone out of their way in the mainstream media to paint him as a danger to any number of groups of people based on political issues just like that. And I just see the man as saying very reasonable things like, we want peace between Russia and Ukraine. We don't want a war with Russia. We don't want a 20-year war with Russia. We certainly don't want a nuclear escalation. We want peace. And, whether you believe him to be genuine or not, can we at least agree that the premise is reasonable?
Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate you taking the time here, and I appreciate you coming all the way here.
Thank you.
For this. I'm glad for the chance to meet you in person here.
Thank you. Good to meet you too, man.
And I don't know when the story will go. Sure. The plan was just sometime between the conventions, so
okay.
I can keep you posted on that.
Okay. Thank you, man.
All right.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks a lot.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Have a great day.